Winter Severity is one of our winter ecology lessons that puts the students in the role of a winter ecologist. The three main goals of this lesson are for the students to define weather factors that determine severity for animals, to compare and contrast microclimates and landscape features at outdoor sites and predict which are most severe, and lastly to determine which site would be most appropriate for human or animal survival. To begin the lesson, you're going to want to talk with your students about what are some of the factors that might affect an animal, such as the temperature that's outside, the amount of snow that's outside, what the wind speed might be, and if there are any evidence of other animals that are active out there. You're going to need to explain to the students what wind chill is. Wind chill is actually two factors coming into one. So we have temperature and we have wind speed. On this graph, we have temperature on the x-axis and wind on the y-axis, and you can see that although it might be negative 12 degrees, it may actually seem like negative 18 when you have the high wind speeds out there. So you need to keep both those factors in effect when you're looking at a microclimate. In order for students to record the min and max temperature out at each of the sites, they're going to be taking a look at this min-max thermometer. And this can be a little confusing to read, so I'm going to show it to you up close so that you'll have a good understanding of how to use it. On this thermometer, there are two bars that take different temperature readings. On the right-hand side, it shows you what the maximum or warmest temperature has been over the period of 24 hours, because we reset them before the lesson begins. So when you're reading this, you're going to want to read on the Fahrenheit side of this scale, and you can see that the thermometer pointed at just about 78 degrees. So that was actually fairly warm because this was inside. When you go to the left-hand side, it'll tell you the coldest temperature that this thermometer reached. And now you're going to have to read it again at the bottom of this bar, and now you'll see that the numbers are actually going down here. So it goes 20, 40, so we're at about 42 degrees Fahrenheit is what the coldest temperature was for this thermometer. When they are recording their information for the current temperature, the current wind speed, and the wind chill, they're going to use the Kestrel meter. So I'm going to show you what that looks like underneath the camera as well. So in the center button, I turn the center button on, and right now it's giving me the wind chill. So I'm going to just go through pushing the arrow button until it says speed. Right now the wind speed is 0 because there's no wind blowing through the fan that you see up here. But if I go to the next one, it'll show me, it does average speed and min and max speed, but we are more concerned about what the current temperature is. So here's the current temperature reading, and then it'll also give me what the current wind chill is under chill. And it also has that little wind blowing icon there to remind you what that is. Because the students are traveling to 6 different sites, you're not necessarily going to be with all the students at the same time. So you're going to be sending them out in small groups. There are arrows on the trees that mark the trail and make it pretty easy to find, as well as their map that they have on their clipboard. Some of them will find when they get to site number 5 that is actually our subnivean shelter, which is giving an example of what it would be like to be underground. So there won't be any snow, there shouldn't be any wind speed either. So that location is going to be very different from the other 5 locations. Here we are at site number 1, so we're going to start our data recording. The other data that you're going to record will be snow depth at this station, so you're going to use the ruler that's attached to the station right here and look to see right at the base what the current snow depth is. It looks like today's snow depth is 0 inches. Then the last thing you need to do is take a look at your data sheet. I see I've got I can't tell any animal activity because there's no snow on the ground. I can look around and see if there's been any feeding sites, see if there's been any pine cones that have been chewed on by animals. I can't tell if there are any animal beds because there's no snow out either, but I would check that on here if I saw that. And then back down here on the site description, I'm going to want to take a look around me. I can see that I'm up on a ridge right over Sunset Lake. So I'm going to put that I'm on a ridge top. This is a pretty shady area. If I look around this general area, most of it is shady. And when I look up, I can see that most of the trees are evergreen trees. Most of them are red and white pines. So I would check that off as well for site number 1. Then I can move on. Now that we're back in the classroom and all the students have collected the data, now we're going to share the data with each other and determine which site would be most appropriate for survival. So we would look at everyone's overall data that they've hopefully completed, and we can take that data and compile it into a larger comparison sheet. This is something that you can have the students do on their own if you have more time, or you can do as a group if you're short on time. You'll see that the first chart that we've got here is just showing the 6 sites on the access bar and the current temperatures. So this will give us a chart of what the current temperatures are at all 6 sites. Then we're going to have to answer some of the questions, such as which sites had the most highest winds and the lowest warm temp. Down here in this bar, we also want to take a look at snow depths, because snow has such an effect on animal movement and the amount of energy that they put out when they're trying to survive in the wild. So we take all of these in consideration, and then we try to answer the question 11, where would you want to spend the night if you had to, or if you were a deer and you had to survive? So that way we're getting to our last objective, and we're identifying what would be the most appropriate site for human survival. One thing that you'll want to do with your students after you've come inside and you've had a chance to collect all of your data is bring that data to share with future students that are coming out to SWES. So on our winter severity data poster, we have the snow depth in inches, which we want to record the average snow depth. So you'll just have to mark the date that you were out and what the current snow depth was, and you'll do the same thing for the average wind speed that you experienced while you're outside. So you'll write the date, and then you'll take everyone's average, you'll take everyone's wind speed and create an average for what the wind speed was like on that given day. Then the students that come in the future can start to create a graph of what winter was like out at SWES. Now that you're at the end of the lesson, let's just make sure that we hit all of our main objectives. So first, we define the weather factors that might determine severity for animals. Things like the wind speed, the amount of snow, the current temperature, the wind chill, and some of the landscape features that might also affect where an animal might want to live. We also compared and contrast the microclimates and the landscapes of 6 different stations, so we have a better idea of where animals might prefer to live and what situations might be more severe for them. And lastly, we determine the most appropriate site for animal survival. By the end of the lesson, your students should have a very good idea of what a microclimate is and what it's like for an animal to survive out in the elements. When you're done teaching at the end of the day, it is your responsibility to reset the min-max thermometers. So to do that, you're going to take this small magnet and you're just going to move the bar down to the mercury on both sides. Then you'll put this back out at the station, and it'll be ready for the next 24-hour period where the students can again review the high and low temperatures for that time.